So benefits of cloud computing is what this presentation is about. And yeah, so first one to say, what is cloud computing? Cloud computing represents a transformative IT paradigm, offers seamless access to servers, network storage, development tools, and applications via the internet. Instead of hefty investments in equipment, training, and infrastructure maintenance, cloud service providers assume these responsibilities. Yeah, going to the cloud reduces time and cost maybe again in some way. And there are top 10 benefits of cloud computing that one can look at, for example, from Oracle. And if you're interested in cloud computing, you have your own reasons. Hopefully I catch some of the benefits that you're looking for with the details I present. So we have three distinct ways in which we think at least Geodict has to do something with the cloud. The first one, maybe most prominent one, is many of you already have your own cloud solution. We call that your private cloud. Yeah, it's somehow you already, there's an existing way that you are using the cloud. The second one is Math2Market becomes the cloud service provider. Yeah, then Geodict is done as a software as a service. And the third one is you don't even feel the cloud. You just run in Geodict and things happen in the cloud with you even noticing much. So here's the examples of Geodict in clients' private clouds. First one is there are other cloud service providers. The second one is actually specifically involving Microsoft as a cloud service provider on an Azure cluster. And then the third one is a bit off. The new Geodict Job Queue in a way gives similar benefits that you get from cloud computing, sort of on your own, maybe a large server in-house that you can use as if it was a cloud solution. So there's a little bit of a reminder, not so important, the slide is rather full. The earliest thing that we started doing right away 12 years ago when Math2Market started, we provided a OLicense license server on the internet for people to have a floating license use accessible anywhere when their IT wasn't ready to give access to this kind of solution. Since then, we have switched to providing RLM by Reprise software license servers that can be used in the cloud. We're providing the license, and then you can access that floater outside your company's network wherever you want. The benefit is using the floating licenses. License servers installed and maintained by us, and there are pay-per-use possibilities where this is important, where we can analyze the log files, and then you end up paying just for the amount of Geodict usage instead of having an annual license or permanent license. We have positive experiences so far. No negative ones. I can mention a few here. My point is I mentioned Google Cloud, I mentioned Azure, and I mentioned Amazon Web Services. Those are the ones that we explicitly know our clients have been working with, and there can be cloud service providers like Atos, Uber Cloud, or Microsoft that then we interact with your cloud service provider and install it and help your CSP to run Geodict the way that you're used to, and we're collaborating with your cloud service provider essentially. So your existing cloud infrastructure gets used if you want to do that. Here's one example on a rather large installation in Azure cloud. We see that that idea of having a pay-per-use option. There is a permanent license, and one can see that in operation. There's about a half a year, early 2022, a half a year of operation. The permanent license is in use pretty much all the time, but then we see 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are generated data. That's the way it looks like in principle. This is not real data. Yeah, so, but the use cases are like this, where up to, I think, 15 or 13 nodes running for 24 hours on 16 cores will create up to 5,000 CPU hours in one day. So when the client wouldn't want to, the clients here wouldn't want to have a permanent 16 Geodict licenses and instead pay only for the time when they're actually using them in that case. So there's a fee for availability, fee for actual usage, and the flexibility is to use unlimited resources when you need them without having to pay for those unlimited resources the whole time. The next example, our job queue. There it is. There is a button cloud. There's a button job queue. Next, they work like the like the run button, except it runs, when you hit run, it runs on your own computer. When you hit cloud, it runs in the cloud. And when you run job queue, it runs on some job queue server that has been installed in your system at that point. So you get easy scheduling of simulations over the weekend or vacations. You get accurate measurements of runtimes without interference by others. That's how we are using this ourselves. Yeah, we have a large benchmark machine that gets pretty popular. If multiple people use it at the same time, then you can not use the measurements, and by running them in a scheduled fashion, one after the other, we are allowed to get runtime measurements out of this, for example. Yeah, in some other areas, maybe a large compute resource can be shared by 12 to 14 people from 3 different continents using this model here. Second, Geodict software as a service, when we are the service provider ourselves. So this picture, I have to explain a little bit what's going on here. There's a Linux background window, so that's somebody's desktop, somebody at Math2Markets, by the way, a Linux user there. And inside there, we see a Firefox. There's a browser window right there. And inside that browser, you're seeing a desktop again. So here's the real desktop on your local machine. And here's the background of a Linux desktop window. You can see the trash back there. And then inside your browser, inside Netscape, sits an instance of Geodict that you can use as if it was on your desktop. I love it, right? Because I have maybe a laptop and somebody else, and this could be a real powerful machine in the cloud, right? And you have the visualization capability, the GPU in the cloud and all that, where you are sitting. I mean, you could try to do that on your cell phone, right? Anywhere where a browser runs, this will work if your cell phone has a big enough screen to show reasonably well what's happening in Geodict. This just runs in the browser right there. And Math2Market are the ones that are hosting the environment. And we're fortunate to have permission from OMV to mention that they are one of our customers of doing it just in this fashion. They're using Geodict software as a service from Math2Market on Amazon Web Services. And one can see that besides that window in the cloud that we're using, there's also a configuration setup. You know, it says cloud instances here, you get project data and so on. So there's an interface around that not the user sees, but the administrator configures, and you can say, I want to run a second, third, fourth machine on demand up there. And Math2Market are the ones that are actually hosting this environment on Amazon Web Services for our clients. And the benefits are the usual ones. We can put new features as they get developed. Some of our clients can do cycles of only every 3 years will their IP allow for the next version of Geodict, because it takes them so long to certify it, to run in their environment. Yeah, when we're the ones hosting, we're not messing with any of the local requirements, then we can update this. I don't know, what's the highest frequency we've done? 2 weeks or so, and you get the new version up there. If something was developed new in a project together with you, you'll have it right away. There's no additional IT personal costs. It's all done by Math2Market. We're using always the most recent and best fitting hardware for your needs. Yeah, Amazon can update, I don't know, every couple of months they have the newest hardware right there, right? We are on a 3-year cycle maybe, getting newer versions. Clients in OMV, for example, they like the better CO2 imprint. So Math2Market is swallowing the CO2 imprint of a major oil company. It's kind of funny to me. So we're the ones that get that hit. And we can do an individual customer cloud interface, you know, configure it the way that it looks, the way you want it to. Okay, we're not taking all of OMV's, right? Only the CO2 for doing Geodict simulations from OMV. Yeah, we are really our first and most important user of this so far. We're not advertising it enough. I think here I am advertising it today. At our own user meeting last year, we had 65 concurrent users, and this would have been a mess had everybody brought their own laptop and we send you an email up front, please download the version from here and there, put the data on there. It's a lot of work. And then people show up and they haven't done it. And the first hour of an 8-hour workshop is spent on people actually getting ready to get started. And that's not happening, right? We are setting it up. We have 65. That was the peak usage last year. 65 instances from Amazon Web Services, individual login data. You get your own data during the sessions. Data and licensed software pre-installed. It's all there. Everybody has the exact same machine as the trainer, so things run at the same time, not on different laptops. Somebody takes an hour and another guy has it done in 5 minutes. You know, the benefits were huge. Yeah, everybody starts same working installation, same hardware, same data. And last perk, if you have a second trainer, which we usually do, and for this number we have even more, they can access the individual screens that people are working on and help participants in one-on-one settings while everybody else is continuing with the trainer, actually. It's beautiful. It's at least as good as on-site. When you have 2 or 3 people, you can do that, of course, as well. Somebody is getting stuck in the workshop or in the training session, a second person can go and help them continue, but this can be done in the cloud as well. We're using this also in training sessions and evaluations for clients. So before you get into using the software, you may not be ready to buy the expensive hardware, and you may want to try how well would it work for the cases that you're into. This can be done by just getting the right machine from Amazon for that particular application that you're on. Otherwise, it's pretty similar to the workshop benefits right there. So using it as software as a service, here's the last one, Geodict accessing the cloud for you. You're working on your local machine as you're used to, and then there are a few cases by our clients that illustrate the benefits of that. So here's one. We are working together with Kaleidosim and Zürcher Hochschule for University of Applied Sciences, Zürcher Hochschule für angewandte Wissenschaften, in a Eurostars project. There is some European funding for this, for the Swiss parties, and Master Market, we are a self-funded project partner. We're friends with them in a way. And the cloud GUI to upload Geodict jobs is done by Kaleidosim, and large simulations can be run in the cloud, started from the GUI. Here with this extra, let me highlight that for you. Yeah, there's the cloud button right there. If you hit run in the cloud, I hit run in the cloud preparing for this talk, and up comes this window, and I have a username and I need a password, and then I'm connected, and then the stuff will continue working, hitting the cloud button as with the run button right there. Given that the first example is the same example you've already seen earlier, but my pitch, I have a different angle on that right now. So Philippe Marmé, who we mentioned earlier from ZHAW, he has a PhD by now on this topic. In his presentation, he showed 2D slices of realized virtual 3D structures based on 3 digital twins. And for that variation, the construction parameters of the digital twins are interpolated, etc. So this is the database. But he was able to create all these entries in the time it takes to do a single one. Because you can set the parameter study in Geodict. I'm not getting into that at this moment. Yeah, so we have 2 parameters varying on the X and Y direction. You're creating all that parameter study, and you ship that to run in the cloud, and it can run on, I don't know how many we have there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 vertical, and let me guess 15 horizontal. So I have estimated 150 different parameter settings. They run all at the same time. Because you have 150 different computers in the cloud, each of them runs one of those parameters, and you get the answer for that whole parameter study in the time it takes you to do a single one. And Philip actually did, and we part of the project, the Eurostars project, was there to make this possible, and that was one of the prototypical demonstrations here. So here's an example from a presentation a few years ago. We have people from Mannert Hummel in the audience, so this was a beautiful presentation a few years ago. And here one can see somebody may want to study a whole lot of different geometries, different filter media, and at the time one simulation was estimated to be 2.5 weeks, and then if you multiply that by 180 simulation, I think was the total, then you end up with 75,000 computer hours. And here's an example of, it wasn't available at the time, but if you were to do that today, instead of running them sequentially one after the other, you would be running them all at the same time, and you would get the answer of 180 times faster running them in the cloud in parallel rather than running them one after the other. Here's another example from Geodict intrinsically again. We've seen this now multiple times, the study of a primary drainage in this case. So we have 2 phases. We have oil and water, and as the process is happening, you have different amounts of oil and water. And so you saw the animation earlier. And so the different points, different amounts of oil and water, those are different points on the x-axis in these 2 graphs here. And for each and every amount of water inside there, you want to compute maybe the relative permeability, the resistivity index, as a function of water saturation. And the way Geodic works, it creates the water oil distributions rather quickly all at the same time. So in a way, you have the input data for all those different points here on the, let's say for the different X coordinates, you already have the data. And then if you ship it to the cloud, blam, all the points that are on there, they all get computed at the same time. Okay, having that many licenses purchased for the whole year, okay, we would love you to do that, but nobody, wants to do that for a couple of simulations here and there, right? That stuff you want to do pay-per-use based. You want to run all those simulations in the time it takes to do one of them and do it pay-per-use to pay only for the time that the simulation is actually running. And our way of doing that is you have to have a regular license for us to let you actually get into this kind of using the cloud. I'm now back to benefits, in particular for Master Market here. When we were, one of the big powers of Geodic is creating training data for neural networks. The fiber find here, the NeuNet is getting more and more sophisticated. We have larger and larger sets of training data and so on. And just creating realistic training data where fibers don't overlap and those things, it can take a while. And to create hundreds of those, thousands of those, it ends up being interesting for us to actually create the individual data sets. Now we see here it's only 8 on the right that can be identified, the individual fibers. We can create all of those in parallel in the cloud in the time it takes to do one of those data sets. And then we can actually, second stage is do also the training in the cloud, because maybe we have more GPU available in the cloud than we're willing to purchase for us permanently, for example. So use the cloud to provide hardware resources, both very powerful hardware or hardware, a lot of computers at the same time that we don't want to buy permanently for Master Market. So this is the second example. In the cloud, we have access to extreme graphics GPU, maybe more GPUs than we would be willing to buy for a short time. Right, the guys here that you saw talking about artificial intelligence, Andreas, Rolf, and so on, they use hardware resources that we're not willing to buy yet, and one can try different GPUs that we don't have all the variety, etc. Last but not least, I'm well on time this time, Matthias. Here's one that we're particularly proud of that just got finished a few days ago, just in time in a way, because we had to ask for very specific hardware that wasn't regularly available. So we got extreme memory and CPU hardware here. We got the one machine that had 160 cores, 4 terabyte main memory. That's not usually on the list of available hardware because one doesn't really need that kind of compute resources. And we attempted in time for this presentation to do a world record here. We ran an 8,192 cubed data set. So that's about 550 billion data points. I love those numbers. I come from high performance computing a long time ago. So this is the largest 3D data set that I'm aware of that anybody has ever done a shared memory calculation on. Yeah, this is really a world record. We ran it, it took about 26 hours. It took about 3.4 terabyte, but you need to get 4 because that's the way the hardware is available. 27 hours, it cost us 1,400 euros, actually, that record run. And yeah, we didn't have to purchase the hardware for that. That was nice, right? 1,400 for a world record, I'm willing to spend that, but I don't want to know what that machine would have cost otherwise. And we came out in another data point, and so one wants to do that only one time, right? So there's a synthetic data set from Hilfer and Sauner back from 2011 that we're using for this kind of testing that's available, the same data with different resolutions, and we're looking, as we're having higher and higher resolution, more and more data points on the horizontal, what's the behavior of the computed permeability out of that. And seeing this, yeah, here we have a world record. It's announced today, 550 billion voxels, 77 billion fluid voxels were done. And I would like to have Sven up on the stage real quick here right now. Please come up. Yeah, he's the one who does all the sweating here. So permeability simulation, world record, 4 terabyte. It wasn't that expensive. If you want to do that yourself, some big data set that you do need to run, we will do it with you, right? We have the people that can actually get the hardware. It took the longest to actually get the hardware, 2 months, and then there were some delays and so on until we had the hardware ready to actually do that run, and then 27 hours to run the simulations. So summary of all this, we run Geodict in private clouds. We work with Azure, Google, AWS. So far, we would be willing to go with other clouds as well. You can do pay-per-use. We have a queue actually. You can share large in-house compute resources. On Amazon Web Services, we have set up Geodict as software as a service by Mastermarket. No hardware to maintain, no software, frequent updates, green computing if you want. We can do workshops and individual training sessions right there. And then we have Geodict on the Google Cloud, where we saw the electrode material database filling design of filter media could be done there now, but wasn't done back then. A rel perm and resistivity index for oil and gas, short-term GPU and short-term CPU usage, including a world record that we used the hardware for there. So here's maybe the question for you. What do you do to use one of our cloud options? Well, what are your cloud options? We can help you with your cloud service provider. You can use Geodict on a desktop in the cloud. We are providing that for you. Or you can use Geodict on your own desktop and perform simulations seamlessly in the cloud from there. And yeah, we provide cloud usage so far as an individual solution because the data sequencing and so on, the legal things are not completely automatically figured out yet. So Carolina is one of them. Will help with the legalese there. And who do you need to talk to? Well, ask your usual point of contact at Mastermarket if you have questions about using the cloud. Thank you very much. I think I'm hopefully okay for the lunch announcement then. Thank you.